What's up guys, my name's Brandon and we are less than a week away from seeing the brand new M1 iPad Pro, and before that day comes, I wanted to discuss why I'm eating my own words. So in my live stream for Apple's Spring Loaded event last month, I said that this new iPad likely would not be worth upgrading to if you already own a 2020 iPad Pro, because this thing right here is already insane and honestly overkill for most people. But after seeing the reveal of that new iPad Pro, and especially after hearing the price, I was instantly eating my own words. $10.99? It's only $100 more? Alright, come on Apple. This new iPad Pro may be worth selling your 2024. I said it before that it's not, you should keep your 2020, but after hearing the price and everything, honestly I would sell your 2020 and get this new one. Sell it now while you can and get the new one. It's 50% faster, 40% better graphics, the better display. I mean, come on. So if you have a 2018 or a 2020 iPad Pro, let's discuss why I think you might want to or why you might not want to upgrade to the new M1 iPad Pro. And I also want to discuss why I picked the configuration that I did and why you might not want to settle for the 8GB version. So let's start with the elephant in the room, and that is performance. So this 2020 iPad Pro has the A12Z chip, which offers absolutely incredible performance even over the 2018 iPad Pro's A12X chip. And over that 2-year span, we also went from 4GB of RAM in all of the 2018 models except for the 1TB model, which had 6GB of RAM, to the 2020 coming standard with 6GB of RAM and the 1TB model having 8GB of RAM. But now, with the 2021 iPad Pro in 128, 256, and 512GB models, those all come with 8GB of RAM standard, while the 1TB and the all-new 2TB model both come with a whopping 16GB of RAM. That is the most RAM Apple has ever included in an iPad by a wide margin. Now, of course, we don't know how big of a difference this RAM increase will actually make in your everyday life, especially since I cannot even think of anything that this 2020 model just simply can't handle. It runs everything just fine. I mean, I've played games for hours on end. I've edited 4K 10-bit video in LumaFusion. I've done everything pretty much to push it to its limit, only to find that there really is no limit on the 2020 iPad Pro. So I cannot even fathom what this next iPad Pro will be capable of. Now, Apple claims that it will see 50% faster CPU performance and 40% faster graphics performance with that 8-core CPU and GPU, and those claims actually seem to be accurate since benchmark tests from users with early access to this new M1 iPad Pro show a 56% increase over this iPad Pro, the 2020 iPad Pro, 56% faster. I mean, of course, that's based on Geekbench and benchmark tests, which don't always tell the full story, but still, that's crazy. And if you compare those numbers to the M1 Max released at the end of last year, you'll see a strong correlation. It's very close to the numbers that we saw with the M1 MacBooks and the M1 Mac Mini. So with all of this power, and especially with this big increase in RAM, you have to wonder what Apple has planned for the future of the iPad and iPadOS. Now we know that the next version of iPadOS, iPadOS 15, will bring some dramatic changes to the home screen, but could we be getting closer to seeing pro apps on the iPad like Final Cut Pro or Logic or the Photoshop, the full Photoshop that we've been waiting on for a while? Could we actually see those pro applications come to the iPad? So if you use pro applications on your computer and you would like to use those on your iPad, like if you work off of your iPad a lot, or you can see yourself doing that in the future, I think it's, a good chance that we could see pro applications come to the iPad at some point. The only thing is, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be this year like a lot of people think. So, I mean, if you have a 2018 or a 2020 iPad Pro, I would maybe just hold off for a little bit until at least the pro applications get announced, because it may not even be in 2021 or even 2022 for that matter. So for performance alone, yes, the 2021 M1 iPad Pro is going to be insane, but your 2018 and your 2020 will most likely still be just as powerful as you need. So I say that if you have no need for pro applications, just stick with your 2018 or your 2020 iPad Pro. It's going to be powerful enough. But if you want to future-proof yourself, it could be a good idea to go ahead and get this M1 iPad Pro. Now, another improvement with this M1 chip is likely going to be battery life. Now, this will not be as dramatic of an improvement as it was with the M1 MacBooks, but I'm guessing that we will see a minor bump in the battery life thanks to that M1 chip. Now, Apple does still claim all-day battery life for the M1 iPad Pro, but they don't provide any details about an increase over previous models. So we'll have to wait and see until I get mine here in the studio so we can do some battery drain testing compared to the 2020 iPad Pro to see just how big of a difference the battery life makes. The display is another reason I'm really excited to upgrade to this new iPad Pro. Now, the 11-inch model will retain the same display as the 2020 iPad Pro, but the 12.9-inch model will be getting the long-awaited mini LED display, which Apple is calling Liquid Retina XDR. This LCD display is powered by over 10,000 LEDs and features a max full screen brightness of 1,000 nits and a staggering 1,600 nits of peak brightness while watching HDR content. That is compared to 600 nits of max brightness on this iPad Pro right here, the 2020 iPad Pro. So literally, almost a 3x increase in max brightness, which is just crazy. And it's going to be great for watching movies, especially because movies tend to look a little bit dark on the iPad Pro now, the 2020 iPad Pro, and just previous generations in general. So this mini LED screen is going to be great for just a much brighter, more vibrant display than we've seen in the past. Now, one of the more overlooked additions to this year's iPad Pro is the Thunderbolt 4 port, which will allow us to connect to more things like Thunderbolt drives and Thunderbolt hubs, external monitors, including the Pro Display XDR. You will actually be able to hook up the 2021 iPad Pro to the Pro Display XDR and get full res, full quality on that. So that's crazy. And not to mention the read-write speeds will also see an improvement as well with that Thunderbolt 4/USB 4 port. Now, the upgraded cameras are another feature that's going to be somewhat overlooked because most people just don't even care, honestly, about the cameras in general on a tablet. But this new iPad comes with a new video call feature named Center Stage. So this will allow the front-facing camera to use machine learning to automatically pan and zoom to keep your face in the center of the frame as you move around. So this is really, really cool. And this is actually made possible with the M1 chip, of course, along with the improved 12 megapixel true depth camera, which has a 120-degree field of view, which is compared to the 7 megapixel wide angle front facing camera on the previous generation iPads. So a big improvement to the front facing camera. And of course, when you pair it with the M1 chip, it's going to do magical things to that front facing camera. And we do also have a minor bump to the rear facing camera as well, since they now get Smart HDR3 support compared to first generation Smart HDR and last year's model, the 2020 model. So yeah, for just $100 more than the 2020 iPad Pro, the new M1 iPad Pro is an upgrade that just makes a lot of sense, especially if you are already in the market for a new iPad Pro. And if you own a 2018 iPad Pro, I would honestly suggest selling that and just using the money you make from it to buy this new M1 iPad Pro. That's, again, what I personally did with mine last month. Now, of course, I do need to point out that if you are more than satisfied with the performance in your 2018 or 2020 iPad Pro, there's no reason to upgrade. But if you do use your iPad for work, especially anything in the creative field, I do think that you should upgrade, especially since you can write this off as a business expense for taxes. Now, as for my exact configuration, what I ordered, I decided to go with the 12.9-inch 256GB model with 8GB of RAM. Now, I don't think I will ever need 1 terabyte of internal storage or even 16GB of RAM, since that would be overkill for how I use my iPad Pro personally. But if you are a photographer or a videographer and you store a lot of files locally, or if you are constantly moving files over from an external drive to your iPad and vice versa, the 1 or the 2 terabyte options with 16GB of RAM makes a lot more sense. But for most people, the 8GB of RAM models will be more than enough, especially if you save most of your photos and files in general in the cloud and not locally on your iPad. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to break down some details on the new M1 iPad Pro and kind of let you guys know my opinion and my exact configuration, what I ordered before it arrives here in the studio in less than a week, just on Friday. So I will also be doing a full comparison of the 2020 iPad Pro versus the new M1 iPad Pro once I actually have that new iPad in hand. I did also get an 11-inch model, which I will be returning, but I wanted to get it just to kind of compare the sizes and tell you guys the differences between the two and which one I think you should get. So stay tuned for a lot of coverage on this new iPad Pro. And if you guys don't want to miss those videos, make sure you hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any of my iPad Pro coverage. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.